Welcome back to Life on Record. Today's episode is recorded in 2 parts. So let's get into part 1. Welcome back to Life on Record, the podcast where we laugh so we don't cry about our soul-crushing realities. It's episode 5, so let's go.
All right. And yes, do not adjust your video. I am wearing the same shirt as the previous episode. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. So we've gotten many things wrong, especially in relationships. And so we'd like to share some of those. Some of this is going to be very humbling for us, so stick around. It's a can't miss episode.
So let's start talking about relationship advice. So Kenny, what is some relationship advice you would give someone starting a new relationship or a new marriage?
Some advice I would give to new couples or people wanting to get into a relationship is to be an active listener. You know, communication, I believe, is the number one thing that people can get wrong in a relationship, and it is the most important thing that you need to get right. And so when you're first meeting someone, you know, really listen to things that they talk about, their interests, things that they don't want to do in a relationship, as far as where, you know, their goals for a specific relationship. Maybe someone, you know, eventually does want to get married, but they don't want to have kids, you know? And if you're someone who wants to have kids, then maybe that relationship's not meant to be, and that's fine. But that's what makes communication important and listening important, is you want to make sure you're on the same page with someone in order to move forward in a relationship. And it, you know, makes me think back to things that I got wrong, and specifically my marriage. My wife is from Russia. She speaks with an accent. And so communication sometimes, specifically over the phone in the early days, was a little different, or a little difficult, I should say. And understanding what she was trying to convey, because a lot of times with any language, there's people speaking come from two different language backgrounds. You know, there's going to be some miscommunication. Somebody uses the wrong words and it sounds like they mean one thing when they meant something else. And so it's important to really sit and talk in person and say, hey, this is what it's, you know, sounds like you're saying. Is this what you really mean? Or are you trying to say something else? Like, so there was a lot of that going on in the early days of my marriage, or and even dating prior to getting married.
What would be one of the things that she said that was very confusing and didn't make sense to you?
Yeah, great question.
Misunderstood it.
Man, I don't know. It's 20 something years ago, I guess. Now I'm trying to think. I guess without getting into being specific, because I can't think of a specific thing, it would more likely be something that was like, I would think she wasn't on my side, and something that happened during my day that was bothering me. You know, whether I was upset with a coworker or upset with a friend, or, you know, just kind of venting to her about something, and then she would chime in with something that I perceived as not being on my side, which is okay. You know, your significant other is not always going to be on your side, although I believe they should be to a certain extent, obviously. But when you're mad and upset about something and you're venting, and then they come across as not being supportive, or when they weren't trying to sound that way, when they were trying to be supportive, but it just comes off wrong. Again, like I said, maybe she used the wrong words because she just didn't know exactly what to say in that situation. So something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and it sounds like it could be something that's just if it was early in your relationship, it could have been just miscommunication in between a man and a woman. It didn't necessarily mean that it was a language barrier. It could have been the
True.
opposite of that. Although words in different languages have different meaning, most words have Latin original meanings or wherever the root of the words come from. But in American English, because it's different than other English languages,
Right.
a lot of our words can have the same meaning, or the same words can have different meanings, or it's very similar. They sound the same. I know that me personally, early in my marriage, there were a lot of times where I would put my foot in my mouth and say things that I didn't really mean or came out across the wrong way. So I definitely can see where your wife came from and where maybe she said something that didn't make sense to you or didn't feel like it was on your side. My wife had said that same thing to me, because she dealt with a lot of customers working at a bank, working in that kind of retail situation, that retail setting, where she'd have to deal with a lot of those things. And I wouldn't necessarily always understand it because I would just think of it like, okay, well, the customer's always right, or you want to make sure that they're taken care of, but not always. Sometimes there's different situations where that could be wrong. But I may have said things that, didn't make sense. Not that we got in a lot of arguments when we were first married. We didn't, because I was gone a lot. But in those type of situations, I can clearly understand, and I get where you're coming from and where that could have been a difficult time to deal with, trying to understand each other and trying to relate on whatever it was, a good day, bad day, or whatever you were going through.
Right. And you kind of reminded me of something. And a lot of our disagreements or arguments early on were mostly things that I just had, maybe my expectations were too high for certain things, or I just misunderstood. It was just a lot of misunderstanding. It seemed like early on. And that's why I think communication is the most important thing, because even when you have disagreements and arguments and fights, it's real important, especially if you want to continue a relationship, because you're definitely going to have arguments and disagreements about things. It's important to continue that communication after. Maybe you don't want to really talk to the person, you want to give them the silent treatment, or you just want to give them time to cool down or whatever. Eventually you do need to go back and reflect on it and say, hey, I was wrong, or this is what I should have said, or this is what I can do different next time. And again, this goes back to previous episodes where we talked about learning opportunities. A lot of learning and growing in the beginning. I was very immature when we first met, and took her for granted for sure. Did things without really consulting her about how she felt about me going to hang out with friends or whatever, which she's always been really good about allowing me to have my own time and not necessarily spend every waking minute that we're, not at work with each other. A lot of growing in the beginning and trying to figure each other out. We have differing personalities, where I'm more laid back and easygoing a lot of times, and goofy and silly and all this. My wife is quite the opposite, where she's more serious about things, and it really takes some time for her to kind of wind down and just kind of relax and stop worrying so much. Well, all right, Matt. So what's some advice that maybe you would give someone that's been together or married for a while, or that's maybe going through a rough patch or something?
First, I would tell them exactly what you told me, was communication is important, and you have to communicate even if there are barriers. Sometimes there are barriers not within the language, but just between man and a woman, because we don't always think the same, we don't feel the same. Like you said, sometimes being a laid back person and somebody that's more strict, but sometimes those opposites attract, and kind of lean into that, right? If you've been married for a while, you kind of understand your partner, you know their little quirks, you know what they're good at, what they're not good at, you know what ticks them off. And some people will kind of twist that a little bit and turn it up a notch just to the banter of, pissing their wife or their husband off. I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I'm completely the opposite of that. I want my wife to be happy all the time. I want her to be in a place where she's not stressed out and she can be productive in whatever she's doing, because I can take a lot. I have very thick skin. Things don't bother me. I just kind of let them roll off and try to be that rock for her, to make sure that I'm that supportive husband, the one that can stand the test of time, bad weather, good weather. It doesn't matter what's going on in our family life or situation. I want to be the person that's there for her, because she can get upset very easy. She does let things affect her very easily, and she can easily get hurt. So I want to make sure that, I'm not saying I have to be very protective, but I want to make sure that she's happy, and they say happy wife, happy life. And that's what I subscribe to. And it's worked out for me. She lets me do the things that I want to do. She's letting me do this podcast with you, which is great. And she does her thing. And then we do a lot of things together. She went to Disney this past week, yesterday, but I needed to work. She really wanted me to take the time off to go to Disney because she's on spring break, and it would have been great to go, but there were some things at work that I needed to take care of, and I'll still get the time off and take it off, but I just wasn't able to go. And unfortunately, she had a good time and I was here working, and that's just life sometimes. But I have to give her 100% credit on everything in my life, right? I am very happy with our marriage, and I would recommend to other people that if you're going to be married for a while, you have to find out what's the happy medium between you and your spouse. What makes you happy? What makes her happy? What makes him happy? And kind of share that and say, okay, maybe there's some things that you can do that'll continue to make you happy. Maybe it's hanging out with friends, but don't hang out with your friends so much that you're spending time away from your wife and your family, and you're not being that equal partner. But then also, it's not just about doing things together and giving each other independence. It's also, like you said, communicate, be that participant in each other's lives where you're sharing the responsibilities. Don't put everything on your spouse. Don't put everything on yourself. Share those responsibilities. Come up with what will work together. And how do you come up with those things? You talk about it. You agree to things. You come to a compromise. A lot of people don't like to compromise. A lot of people are in relationships where they force everything on the other person. Honestly, to me, that's just not healthy. It may work for other people and they just live with it, but I think at the end of the day, there's going to come a time where it's going to explode, and you really need to think about that. And if you've been married for a while and you start to see those little things that could bubble up to be worse, maybe you should go talk to somebody. I'm not saying that everybody should go to therapy, but sometimes that helps. Marriage counseling does help, and it'll help you get some of those things off your chest, and maybe it'll help you come to a better realization. But again, I have to give 100% credit to my wife. She has helped drive the happy life that we live, right? She has helped make our life successful. And then all the beautiful parts of it. I have to give her credit for a lot of things, because I was gone a lot on deployment. When I was in the military, she was at home, taking care of the household, taking care of the kids. She's seen me at my lowest when I was a junior sailor and I was working 14, 16, 18 hours a day. She's seen me at my worst when I've made mistakes and gotten upset or angry at her for no really good reason, just because I didn't like the situation that we were in and I couldn't really do much about it. And she's stuck with me when I've had no money, right? Or very little money, I should say. And we've had to struggle and make sure that, our kids were taken care of. But not once did she say, I'm getting out of this relationship, I'm leaving you, or I'm thinking about leaving you. Not once did she ever say that. And she's helped me reach a level in life that I couldn't have reached alone. If I would have been doing this alone, I would not be where I am today. She's been my motivation, my muse. So my happiness and my success all belongs to her.
Yeah, and the same goes for my marriage as well. We're very lucky in the sense that we have very supportive spouses, I mean, it is almost like listening to myself when you're saying some of that stuff, because I haven't always, as we know, I'm not, how do I say this? I'm not necessarily one that's going to go out and, I don't know, do it all and make all the money and be this, hardcore go-getter type. That's just not my personality. Um, I, some may say it's lazy, and a man's supposed to work hard until they die at 50 from a heart attack. I mean, yeah, some people.
No, we want you to live longer.
Right.
Take it easy, okay?
So,
Take it easy.
So yeah, when I decided to go back to school, I didn't work at all, because I told her, I was like, look, I'll go back to school, but it's really hard for me to focus on two different things, work and school at the same time. It's just, I thrive when I'm focusing on that one thing for the most part, especially something important, should say. And so she allowed me, luckily we were, she made enough money, that we were able to do that. And I was able to go back to school, get my degree. But also what I did is I did most of the cooking, and cleaning at the house, because she's working all the time. Yes, I'm in school and taking classes mostly during the day, and then, would be done early enough that I could, prepare for dinner or do things around the house, to help out, in that aspect. So yeah, she's definitely been the best. I mean, I don't know what else to say as far as that goes. Sometimes I'm not always the best with words, if you've gotten this far, in our podcast. But
if you're on episode 5, they can understand.
I mean, I totally relate with what you're saying. Like I said, we've been very blessed. It hasn't always been that way with past relationships. And if you're out there, again, starting a new relationship, it's hard. You can't really, I guess you can come out and say, hey, do you like someone that's poor or rich? Do you like someone that
who would say poor?
Yeah.
Like,
do you like someone that may not have money the rest of their life? Because there are, unfortunately, a lot of men and women that are gold diggers, and they only want to be with somebody that's super successful, which, again, to each their own. I'll say that. Everybody's different. And so, yeah, do your thing. And if you're not compatible, then, move on. Don't waste anybody's time, for years and years with someone that, one wants kids, the other one does not, or one wants to get married and the other one does not. Like, you're just wasting everyone's time doing that. And so if you really want to be with someone, take the time to get to know them, and hopefully they're compatible. They meet what you're looking for in a person. And guess what? Not everybody's perfect. There's no perfect person out there. There may be perfect for you. And then as your relationship grows and progresses, then you can learn and grow together, and make less mistakes, and do things that are more supportive that you maybe didn't do at the very beginning. Or here's the thing, continue to be supportive. A lot of us think that, this person they're in love with me, they'll love me forever. Well, as we know, sometimes that doesn't happen. People fall out of love, but why do they fall out of love? There's many different reasons.
Well, people change. You grow.
People change. Yeah, they see that they want something else, and it is sad. Or maybe they're, like you're saying, it has to be 50-50. If one person's doing making all the effort, doing everything, that grows old quick. And they most likely will, resent you and not want to be around you or not be with you, and they'll start looking for someone else. So, again, communicate, try to learn from each other, do what's best for your relationship to improve it and move forward. So yeah. Love it.
Okay. Let's do a little context switching, and we're going to talk about parenting as part of the things that we've confidently got wrong in our lives. So, Kenny, what are some of your parenting rules, if you had any, that you kind of subscribe by, ones that maybe have worked or not worked?
Okay, that's a great question, Matt. It's not really something
It's okay if you had no rules and you just let your kids do
no one say
whatever they
that. I mean, the typical rules: eat your veggies.
Do you eat your vegetables?
Unless you're Al Michaels, apparently you don't eat veggies. I
didn't know that.
Brush your
Al
teeth.
Michaels doesn't eat vegetables
before you go to bed, and I don't know. I mean, just all the normal rules, I guess. You have to limit screen time with kids. You have to, or you don't have to. You can do whatever you want, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of something that didn't work. Possibly, like giving ultimatums. Really, maybe with little kids, it works because they still fear you in a sense. Although we don't really want our kids to fear us, we want them to respect us and listen to things that we say that we think are important for them to know. So yeah, I mean, okay, here's something, and being honest, yelling at your kids, that's a mistake I've made in the past. The thing is, we tend to, at least in my instance, we tend to parent our children the way we were parented, and unless you take proactive steps by maybe going through some therapy or reading some, well-known authors on the subject, a lot of people, and myself included, just kind of parent on the fly and then adjust things aren't working, and try to do things different the next time or something like that. Luckily, my daughter, she's very smart. She's disciplined when it comes to school, so she stays on top of her schoolwork and is very curious about certain subjects and has taken advanced classes and stuff. We're very lucky in that sense and very proud of her. It's not like she just takes these classes and just shows up and doesn't really put any effort in. I mean, she works hard. Whether it's writing essays or doing whatever schoolwork, but a lot of times we don't really have to tell her much. Sometimes stay on her about the dishes or cleaning her room. We all know, and I was the same way. Teenagers just kind of let the room go to a mess, but at some point they know that they need to fix it and clean up and do whatever. So a lot of times it's just giving them little subtle reminders. Like she does her own laundry and has been for a few years now. And sometimes she'll leave her clothes downstairs in the laundry area. So I have to remind her to get that. But
I think that's all teenagers or young adults.
And then,
do the same thing.
And then recently with her learning to drive and a lot of rules for that as far as where you can go. But again, we're very lucky in the sense that has a great barometer for right and wrong, and doesn't, as far as we know, she's not out there doing things she shouldn't be doing. She'll spend time with friends and they usually just hang out at each other's house or whatever. But she goes to work, she goes to school, goes to work, comes home, doesn't really do much else, anything outside of that. She's not driving around all the time on the weekends, trying to get into trouble or causing mayhem or anything like that. So, but yeah, when teaching her how to drive, explaining to her that just important things about the most important, I think, is when it comes to driving is when you're in a hurry or you're running late for something. And this is something that it's kind of seems simple but I believe is important, that I learned when I was driving for Pizza Hut, when I was a pizza delivery driver, is we had a basically a poster that said, quick on your feet, slow in your seat. And I think that's important for especially teenage drivers to remember, because they, not all, but, some, and even adults want to drive 20, 30 miles over the speed limit. They, especially when weather's bad, when it's snowing and stuff like that, is keep your distance, slow down. And if you're late, it's not the end of the world, at least for that day. Just make sure you're trying to leave in plenty enough time so you're not late. You're not having to rush while you're driving. So that's some of the rules that have worked so far or haven't worked. So yeah, what about you, Matt? You have 3 kids. And I'm sure you've made some mistakes along the way, no?
But yeah, I've made a lot. Yeah, I'm definitely not perfect in this area. And I have 3 kids that are almost all completely different ages, obviously, but far enough apart, too, that they've all kind of grown up independently of each other's time. And what I mean by that is they're old enough that now they're all adults that think they can make good decisions. But just taking a step back to when they were younger, again, I wasn't there a lot. I was on deployment most of the time, but then the times I was there, things like I've always been the have fun parent. I would do things with the kids to have fun and play with them and go outside and do activities and keep them involved in sports because I like sports. We love sports. So they would try all kinds of different sports until they found something that sticked, and then they would continue to do that. And just giving them encouragement and being that playful, loving father that would help motivate them. But then sometimes when they would get upset or I would get upset or they wouldn't do something, it would be a very short fuse, and I would yell at them because that's what happened to us when we were kids, right? If we did something wrong, we got yelled at, we got spanked, or we got disciplined in a way that was not fun at all. And that did not work with my kids. I'm not saying that I tried that a lot because we didn't. It just didn't work. Our kids did not respond well to that type of discipline. So we kind of had to alter that aspect. And how did we learn how to do that as young parents? My wife and I would get different books or we would do research and try to find out. And one of our children was in therapy. He has oppositional defiant disorder and ADHD. So he was in therapy for a while and on medication for a while. And that helped out a lot because some of it was just uncontrollable in chemical imbalance and things that he just couldn't help. So that was the only way that we could get across to him when he learned how to deal with it, what we could do for discipline. And a lot of the times it was just taking things away that he wanted to do, whether it was watch TV or play with certain toys or do certain activities. That was the only way that we could discipline him. Our oldest child, our daughter, we disciplined her like most other parents would, ground the child, take things away because she's very outgoing. She wanted to go hang out with her friends. She wanted to go do different things. But what I got wrong was, and other people that might have teenage daughters is, and Kenny, you can probably relate to this, you can't argue with them. Like, you're not going to win as a male. They don't get it. They're like, you don't understand me. You're a man. You don't understand what I'm going through. And that's true. As a man, we don't really understand what young girls go through, right? Their moms can, understand that and relate to what they're going through emotionally, physically, all those different things. I just could not relate to that. So, anything that I tried to give her advice or say you should do this or do that, right? It just didn't work at all. So what I had to do, what I learned was I had to rely on my wife to let her do the discipline on that aspect or the helping, and other people in our lives had to help in that area. So that was a huge mistake for me because we would get in like arguments and slamming doors and yelling at each other and all this stuff. And it didn't help at all.
Yeah, same.
At all.
Same.
And it's just something you have to learn to deal with. And then our youngest child, he's the baby, so he's gotten everything. I was talking about Kenny being the baby in our family unit with kids in the last episode. We tell him now, you were spoiled. Like, you got everything you wanted, anything you wanted. Your parents were, better off. They had more money. They had the capability of doing all those things. And he's 6 years younger than his brother. So there's an age gap there. And then he's 8 years younger than his sister. So there's a much larger age gap there. So they were there to help take care of him. And that was a lot of the things that maybe my wife made a mistake along the way is we kind of let the kids take care of each other once they got to a certain age. And we were able to go out and do things and spend more time doing things that my wife and I wanted to do instead of maybe spending time with him and doing things. But he seems to be fine and healthy with it. I mean, he doesn't go out and do a lot of things. Like, you're worried about your daughter going out and driving and going and hanging out with friends and all that stuff. And I tell my kids, like, our daughter doesn't live at home, but our oldest son does. We have a 24-year-old adult male living at home, and we have an 18-year-old son who's graduating high school. But I'm like, go get in the car and go hang out with your friends. Go do something. And they're just like, no, I'm just going to stay here and stream on the internet and talk about my video gaming or play video games or play with people online and talk to them. And every once in a while, our youngest son will have a friend come over, they'll go hang out, and he does go out and do things sometimes, but not that much. Not like when we were kids, like teenagers, we were out running the road, staying out all night, just trying to figure out how to sneak out. Like, if my kids did that, I'd be like, hell yeah, they finally did something. But my wife would not be happy with that. She'd be like, they ain't sneaking out. They better not be doing nothing like she did and like what I did. But I'm okay with that. I'm just like, because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not worried that they're going to go out and do those things, right? But maybe that's a mistake by me just saying, hey, go out and do those things. I want you to go experience it. And then I would feel completely bad if something bad happened. But I know in my heart that they have been brought up the right way and they would make the right decisions. And this, like my 24-year-old son, he doesn't drink any alcohol, and he's tried it, but he does not like it. He's like, this is terrible. So I don't have to worry about him drinking and driving. I know he's not going to do it. So like, that is good that I know that he's not going to do those things, but not them getting moved around all the time and living in 8 different places throughout their life. That was a mistake. I mean, it sucks that I was in the military and we had to move a lot, but that kept them from establishing something, growing up with the same kids and learning and having friends and having that longer friendships. They had to start over, every 2 to every 3 years, they had to start over. And that sucked. And I felt bad about that. But the only thing I can do now is just tell them that as they establish themselves in life, that continue to grow, make friends, do those things. But, we all make those mistakes and we learn. And the best thing we can do is just hope that our kids are happy and healthy and
something
adults.
that I thought of when you were talking, Matt, and I wonder if it's like in the moment you think you're doing the right thing or saying the right thing, and maybe
Exactly.
and then maybe later you wonder if you did. One thing that I did, I was very vocal having a daughter, explaining to her some of the horrible types of people we have in this world and how you have, unfortunately, as a woman, or as a girl, you have to kind of go about your day with your head on a swivel. You have to be aware of your surroundings. Since she was a little girl, I'd pick her up from school, and the first thing she'd do is lock her door. And I say that I wonder if I did the right thing is because she does deal with a lot of anxiety now. And I don't know if I contributed to that or if that was just inevitable anyway or what. She's very aware of the world in general, things that are going on. And I can see how that gives people anxiety. It can be scary. But to her credit, she recognized this at an early age, and not sure if she really wants me talking about it on this podcast, but She does see a therapist now for her anxiety. And she started, especially since she started driving, she kind of waited till, she is 18 now. She didn't start driving at 16, so she waited a little later. Really had no interest early on, and but then gained interest as she sees, her friends wanting to drive, and seeing her friends drive, it's made her want to drive. And I don't know. Like I said, we're all still learning and growing. So I was wrong by informing her of some of the things in the world. But also, I feel better knowing that when she goes out, where she's driving to a friend's house or coming home or work or whatever, that she is aware of things going around. I would rather her be prepared. But also, I feel bad if, who knows if I've contributed to that anxiety or not. But I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing, I guess. So
It's kind of a 50-50. You don't know if you contributed to what they're going through now. And as your kids change in life because they're growing and they're continuing to grow, or if it's just a perceived reality and that perceived reality has gotten worse or better. You don't know. I mean, you're not there. She's talking with her therapist, and it was like when my son was younger, he's going through therapy as a young child and talking with the therapist and doing different things, and you don't really know what they're going through unless they can tell you. And that's the only thing you can do is just talk to them about it and communicate, and until they can tell you what they're going through and what they're feeling. And sometimes it's things that we don't understand with disabilities and with people that have these stressors in life. We don't really know and understand them unless we've experienced them. So we just have to trust that what they're telling us is what they're feeling and just be supportive and be there for them.
And that's essentially the approach I take. I had a sit down conversation with her a few months back, and just to let her know, if she didn't know, that, she can talk to me about anything. I understand there's some things she would probably rather talk to her mother about, and that's fine. Or she'd rather talk to her friends about. I told her that's perfectly fine too, but just let her know that, hey, we're both here, my wife and I, and and that she could talk to us about anything whatsoever. And in hopes that, when it, God forbid, something horrible does happen in her life and she feels like she can't talk to us, I want her to know that, no matter what it is, she can always talk to us about it. And so, yeah. So this wasn't as funny as I thought it would be, but
there's one.
It's
kind of sad.
This segment.
Right? It's kind of sad. There is one thing I wanted to talk about, a mistake that I've had. And our parents will probably listen to this podcast, but I just want to be honest and admit it, that my sons have not had that great of a relationship with their grandparents. And that's partly my fault. Moving, being in the military, being gone all the time, and just not being close to them. Because we have, although we don't have many grandparents left now, we have one, that we had really good relationships with our grandparents, good and bad. I mean, I think there was more good, and maybe in future podcasts we can talk about some of the negative parts of it. But for the most part, it was very good, and we spent a lot of time with our grandparents. We lived near them. We spent every holiday visiting, things like that. And my kids don't do that because, one, we don't go to Alabama that much. They don't come to where we live. Our parents are divorced and they're living in their own lives with their new spouses, but they don't have that much of a relationship. They don't really talk on the phone that much, maybe around birthdays, but the only time they really talk to them is when they visit or we would visit them. And it's just, to me, I think that's a mistake that I made, that I think family is one of the best things that we can do for each other. And we've kind of gone our own direction and kind of done our own thing. And that's partly my fault as a son too. I need to talk to my parents more. Like today, our mom called us and I talked to her for a few minutes, but she was traveling to go see our daughter. who doesn't live too far away, but she spends a lot more time. She talks to her on the phone, they text, and they have a much better relationship, mostly because when I got divorced before I got remarried to my current wife, my daughter has had a much better relationship with her grandparents than my sons have. So, I think that's a mistake where I wished I would have done more for them to have a better relationship. And now that they're adults, it's really on them. So it's not much I can do. I'm not going to force them to have a better relationship, but I think that's a mistake that I made. And I wish that that would have been better.
It's harder, obviously. Like we live in different states. Too, yes, there's
it's
phone
tough.
calls and to correct you, Matt, our mother called you. She didn't call us. She called
That's
you.
true. She called me. That is true. She called me because she was going to see my daughter. I'm sure if she was going to see your daughter, she would have called you. But yeah, she does live closer to my daughter, to my wife and I's daughter. She lives a lot closer because my daughter does live in Florida, but she lives a lot closer to where our mother lives, which is in Mississippi, a lot closer. So it's a little bit easier for her to get there.
Yeah. So, but that's okay. Life's not perfect. So we just have to make the best of.
That's true. Life is not perfect.
Going back to parenting rules and stuff. I mean, I can't speak for all parents, obviously. They're just trying to do the best they can, what they think's best for their children. And we didn't necessarily think that way growing up, as all people do. You go through stages where your parents are the greatest, and then you hate your parents, and then you don't want to talk to them, and then you kind of come back around and you have a better relationship with them, and you kind of understand their point, and then you still don't understand some things that they do or don't do, and so it's a it's a journey for sure. But if you want, Matt, we can jump into the next and final segment here.
Life on Record is written and produced by Matt and Kenny Compton. Music by Mr. Smith.